Hi, this is Jennifer Scales with Business 343, Employee and Labor Relations at Liberty University. I'm here to actually discuss to you Safety Gloves Discharge case with Just Cause number 3. So I've provided you with a PowerPoint presentation if you will actually move on to slide 2. So again, we're going to be reviewing actually the discharge of employee Aaron McNamara from the Barrere Recycling Company and determine if the discharge was actually justified and warranted. My role is going to be to provide you with an overview of the labor relations manager for the Barrere Recycling Company, an overview of this case. Our points of discussion are going to be a brief overview of the case, who's involved, my role, summary of main points in the case, my position of the case, and then address one specific question and then draw a conclusion. So if you move on to slide 3, please. A brief overview of this case. So we know basically at the beginning of the case, information we've been given is that there was an actual bulletin posted on the actual bulletin board of the lunchroom, a notice posted in there of the Los Angeles facility of the Barrere Recycling Company. That notice was actually written in Spanish. The folks involved in this case are actually myself again as the Labor Relations Manager, Rafael Gomez, who's the General Manager, Aaron McNamara, who's a 20-year employee with Barrere, as well as the Local 37 United Paper Workers Union. So Ms. McNamara transferred to the LA facility from the Long Beach facility in January, and in October she was actually given a 3-day suspension based on prior numerous violations around performance and actual safety violations that she did not actually comply with. She was given that 3-day suspension from Rafael Gomez. She was also, once she came back from work, from her suspension, back to work from her 3-day suspension, she was given a final written warning that actually stated, should you violate any Barrere rules or regulations during the next 12 months, you will be immediately discharged from the Barrere employment. So if you move on to slide 4, please. So my position in this case is to review all the facts in the case and determine if there was just cause actually for her termination. So what we know is actually that Ms. McNamara's 3-day suspension, prior to that, Mr. Gomez had actually written her up verbally, I say written up, but verbally reprimanded her multiple times, 6 to 7 verbal reprimands just on safety violations alone. One of these, two of these, she was actually found caught sleeping during safety meetings. She was actually given reprimands around failure to wear safety gloves, her hard hat, safety glasses, and the final conversation right before her suspension was when Mr. Gomez observed her actually reading a Sports Illustrated magazine during working hours. So if you move on to slide 5. The final day of her termination, we can determine that there was an order that was actually brought into the Barrere Recycling Company unexpectedly. It was a 30-gallon order, a huge 30-gallon order of plastic bags, bottles, glass, tin cans, things like that that actually required safety equipment to be worn, especially the gloves, for those employees that were actually working on that task. It was observed by Mr. Gomez that Ms. McNamara, once again, was not actually wearing her safety gloves. She was approached and asked where her gloves were. She told Mr. Gomez that she had left them in her vehicle. She was immediately told to go retrieve those, come back, put them on, and resume her job. She did comply at that point. However, it is at this point that Mr. Gomez felt that Ms. McNamara had actually at that point violated the final written warning that had been issued to her prior to this, since she was again failing to comply with safety regulations. So for that reason, he actually terminated her employment this day. And at this point, the Local 37 has actually filed a grievance citing that there was not just cause for her termination. If you move on to slide 6, please. So for me, as a labor relations manager, it means being asked to actually address a specific question or statement. As the person responsible for labor relations at Barrere Recycling Company, please articulate a case to support your contention that there was just cause in the termination of Aaron McNamara. So if you move on to slide 7, please. So what exactly is just cause? Just cause termination can mean that there is misconduct of an employee or some other event relevant to that employee which justifies the immediate termination of the employment contract. Employees who generally are covered under a union or are members of a union are covered by a collective bargaining agreement where there typically has to be just cause for termination of employment. If you move on to slide 8. Slide 8 states what is will termination. What is at will termination? What's the difference between that and just cause? Well, at-will termination is typically covered for employees who are not members of a union, not protected by a collective bargaining agreement, and are employed basically at will with their employer. And that means that an employer can basically terminate their employment with that employee at any time for any reason. Exceptions to that are typically around, discrimination regulations that you can't discriminate against employees for certain reasons. So if you move on to slide 9. So after reviewing all of the facts in this case, it's my position that Erin McNamara's discharge was actually valid for just cause. We know that she had been warned multiple times. We know that she was failing to comply with safety regulations. Continually over and over, she was actually suspended. She was given a final written warning, and even after that final written warning, she personally chose to make that personal decision and personal choice that she was still not going to follow the regulations for Barrere around their safety requirements and policies. So therefore, we feel that actually her termination was actually justified. If you'll move on to slide 10, please. To help support that, I wanted to go back and actually look at Article 20, which states in the actual bargaining contractual language, is what is just cause? What is the cause for immediate termination as far as the collective bargaining agreement goes? So a couple of things that I pointed out of this is that her failure for number 3, she was being disobedient. Number 6, neglect of duty. Number 7, refusal of her to comply with company policies posted in each department where it can be read by all employees. Now, the union can come back and say that that notice posted in that break room was actually written in Spanish, but Ms. McNamara was given multiple warnings, multiple conversations, and reviewed the policies and the regulations on multiple occasions to know that she would know what those regulations are and what was required, whether she read that actual notice or not. So this has been a point of discussion with her on numerous occasions, and she cannot come back and say that she did not understand or know the regulations within the company policies regarding safety regulations. If you look at number 10, she was also found in violation of sleeping on duty, and she also was found in violation of number 12, reading books, magazines, etc., while actually being on duty. So if you look at all of this information, there is that just cause actually supported there. If you move on to slide 11, please. I also wanted to cite in here that Article 20 also has a Section 2 clause in here, which actually states that discharge or suspension of an employee shall be based on just and sufficient cause with full explanation. So we've given her full explanation as to why she was actually written up, why she was suspended, etc. So there's no reason why she does not understand why she's not being terminated from employment with Barrere. So if you move on to page 12, or slide 12, excuse me. So in conclusion, after reviewing all the facts in this case and providing the details of events leading up to the case and the termination of Ms. Erin McNamara, I find that the employee was actually terminated with just cause. We reviewed what defines just cause, and we actually validated the contractual language in the Barrere Recycling Bargaining Agreement. So I thank you for your time. You'll find a reference page also attached on the very last page of all of the actual references to help support my case and actually my conclusion here. Thank you.